All right. Welcome to the August 26th Arborist call. Our meeting agenda follows a similar format every couple weeks. Just kind of a welcome, any updates from the node implementation, Zcash, Zcashd, and then we have a variety of different discussion topics. A lot of our time in recent conversations has been around NU5. The testnet release for that's imminent. So we kind of go over a status, anything we want to discuss about that. We'll provide an audit update until the audits are wrapped. And then we kind of always revisit the timeline just so everyone's on the same page. An additional topic for discussion today, shout out to Dodger, is what needs to happen before, I just called it what needs to happen before deprecating transparent addresses. So, so I went, this is a presentation that Dodger actually put together when he was at ECC. And I just kind of listed, you know, it's really well done. I think it was kind of a brainstorming session that Dodger led at ECC, but it was just kind of identifying some things that would need to happen before we could potentially do that. And then some of the, you know, some of the thoughts and concerns and how to address those. And then we just kind of have a wrap up, open announcements. If anyone has any audience comments, we actually kind of encourage throughout. Obviously, if there's something at the end someone wants to add, welcome to do that too, but you're also welcome to participate as we go through the different topics. Brief level set on what are Arborist calls if you're not familiar. We meet every 2 weeks to discuss the Zcash protocol. We talk about R&D efforts, design and implementation status, new features, blockers, unresolved issues. The purpose is to make it more accessible and more transparent. So as more teams get involved in protocol development, we want a forum where they can participate or come with their questions, and we can just sync up on all things protocol related. Anyone can participate, so anyone interested in learning about the protocol is welcome to join. If you'd like to present something or suggest a topic for us to discuss, then you can just reach out to me. There's my email address, steven@electriccoin.co, also in the Zcash R&D Discord that Hudson set up for us. And meeting every 2 weeks, we have a lot of flexibility to get different topics slotted in. So we move into the node updates. Anything from Zcashd this week that anyone would like to call out?
Me.
Okay, there you are. I didn't see you when I started, so Deirdre was coming. So okay.
I'm not sure if I was on the wrong link, but whatever. I'm here now. Can I share my screen?
Yes. Let me stop. Okay.
Just for like
all yours.
5 or 10 minutes or something. Let's see.
I think we have plenty of time.
Pick the right window. Okay. So real quick, this past 2 weeks, our first full sprint working on our new mempool. We got some stuff merged in and some stuff that's in flight. We are now doing an aggressive crawl of our peers. Right now it's from the start, but eventually it'll be from the tip of when Zebra gets to the tip of the main chain, to reach out to our peers and ask them for mempool transactions. Stuff, and we've done a lot of work to describe all the sort of errors that we expect to encounter when we are running a mempool, such as transactions that don't semantically verify, transactions that expire, have a low fee, things like that, and transactions that will get ejected through no fault of their own from our mempool and become victims because our mempool is very small. It is about the size of 2, not about, it is the size of 2 for now. So things that are in flight include the storage and wrapping it up as a tower service, an async service, that are inbound message handler for peers that are requesting mempool things in our mempool to us, will be querying. And then on the other side of our crawler, we are asking peers for transactions, but we haven't downloaded them yet. So the next step as part of this sprint is when we get those transactions, we actively download them. And when we download them, we verify them. And when we verify them, we put them into the mempool. So yeah, that's most of what we've got. Any questions? Cool. Let's see, I'll stop sharing. Stop sharing. Had a few questions for ECC, Zcash team, mostly for our own records. any chance that Orchard crate, Halo 2 crate, or any of the Libra Zcash crates are getting a tagged release, even a beta or an alpha, anytime soon? The last time I tried to integrate any/all of them into our build, they were having trouble finding resolutions of their own dependencies together.
Well, if like a beta cut would help, we could do that, I think. One of the main blockers for us actually has just been resolved, which was that the NOM crate has cut a 7.0, which fixes the Funty problems on their end. So that I think was the main blocker for us cutting anything.
Cool.
We're also like, I'm in the process of working on the ZK crypto crate stack. There's a release scheme that we're about to cut of those. So I think once that's out, that would be a good time to potentially cut a, we could cut a beta for the pieces that we have at the moment.
Definitely probably won't sync back to that until either after the end of next week. So that's kind of where we're at, because I had to put any integration of Halo 2 verification aside to do some mtool stuff. So then I'll be like, okay, where is it at by the end of next week, after the end of next week. Cool. Thank you. Any updates on the circuit? I think last we heard it was done but not frozen.
Yep, so we'll get to that next.
Okay, all right, never mind. And related to the results of the QED-it audit? Cool. And then I think the only things we wanted to check in on, any results from the scientific committee on either a Halo 2 or Orchard security proof, something like that?
Well, Mary Mahler was doing the scientific review of the Halo security proof.
Okay.
So Sean he's working on a final version for her to do a final pass on. So that's kind of the quick status.
Cool. All right, cool.
Yeah, Sean's a little under the weather, so he won't be here today.
Okay.
Yeah. I have made a start on an Orchard security proof.
Ooh.
Basically, just adapting the security definitions from the Zcash paper, which we knew had some problems. But both the syntax and some elements of the security games need to be updated.
Can you raise your mic, Deborah?
Both the syntax and some elements of the security games need to be updated. For example, the original Zcash paper didn't cover fairy gold attacks.
That's exciting. I'll be glad to give any feedback on that or just read it. And I think that's everything on our question list. So thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. Any other questions before we move on? I think we'll get more questions answered. Let me get my screen back up. Because we'll talk about
I don't have anything specific to like the mempool stuff you're doing at the moment, but I think I probably will in like a couple of weeks' time when I have time to actually think about it. But
we're writing up stuff as we go, so we'll have something to both put into a zip, but also we're writing up explicitly what the network maps to, and specifically what it, and Tior has done some work on that just this week. That may be relevant to other protocol developers.
Cool. Excellent. We're looking forward to reading that.
Okay. We would, kind of, let's just call it mid-NU cycle. We would do specific updates on Zcashd because there wouldn't be something NU related necessarily to talk about. Our update for Zcashd is largely around NU5, so we'll just kind of move on to that. This is the same zip set, feature set, if you will. I kind of include this here just for completeness so that anyone who happens to see one Arborist call and didn't see the others would know, kind of what's included in NU5, what zips have been updated, which zips are net new. There is an update to zip 316, and I'll kind of bounce it over to Strad to give a little bit of background on that.
Yep. So, so the backstory here is that Iran Trema asked in the UA channel on the R&D Discord about what the current limitations were on lengths of receivers for UAs. To which the answer is, well, currently you can have a receiver at most 256 bytes because, well, sapling and orchard will be 45, transparent's 22. That's plenty, right? They want to store 120 kilobyte receivers. Little chunkier than I think any of us were expecting, but the rationale is that they're experimenting with ideas for diversified, detection key style logic. And as was actually when we started talking about it, pointed out, if we at some point wanted to move to a post-quantum protocol, the keys for that are, I think all candidates are over 256 bytes. So I can imagine that most protocols you'd end up with something that would be like, 400 bytes or something minimum for that. So the original plan for this kind of extensibility had just been to retrofit the type and length fields of ZIP316 to be compact size, which would be backwards compatible because currently all of the currently defined type codes are well under the compact size switching limits. However, Dara noted that there is also a higher level limit currently placed on the total size of a unified address encoding due to the way that F4 jumble works, which is the 4-round Feistel cipher that is necessary to protect against certain reordering attacks on addresses, and that we haven't really found another way to handle without. So, and that was being limited by a personalization string that only allowed for 1 byte chunk lengths. So we've decided to change that to allow 2 byte chunk lengths, which means that a UA will be able to be at most around 4 megabytes, which should be plenty enough for anyone's usage. I don't foresee us ever agreeing to merge any zips that propose addresses being larger than 4 megabytes. That's not usable. Even 120 kilobytes is probably not ideally usable, but it makes sense to allow larger ones anyway. And I think the current limit was something like 16 kilobytes, which is like, it's maybe large enough for post-quantum stuff, but you can't really predict what the protocol would look like. So it might
That's plenty large. It's plenty large for your favorite lattice public keys.
For a single one. But remember, the point of UAs is that you can have multiple
like
alternatives.
One public key is about 1 kilobyte. So if you had like a bunch of them, you could have 16 lattice-based public
right.
keys.
If each protocol required, say, three keys or whatever, then that's starting to push up there. So hence the size limit bump just removes the problem.
I think in practice, if we want to use large keys, then we'll end up defining an address registration protocol. But there are unsolved privacy problems around that. So we don't really want to rely on that working.
Yeah. In the meantime, anyway, it's a simple change, and it's not. We've worked out it's not going to affect the usability of most cases because anyone who's using regular wallets, well, they'll just use the same size. They'll have the same size addresses they currently do, same performance characteristics. And if you're in a constrained environment and seeing one of these a large address like this in some experiment, we confirmed that F4 jumble is compatible with a streaming parsing API. So you can keep your memory usage to about 384 bytes or so of state while streaming up to 4 megabyte UAs if necessary. More likely you just stick a hard cap of like a kilobyte or something on it.
Okay, Nate, your hand was up first, I believe.
Yeah, I made a joke, but then I realized it was kind of half serious, and it's on my mind a potential future use case. I'm not saying we should aim for this right now, but it may be possible to use UAs like across blockchains. So in the future, so something on my mind.
Yeah, the thing with UAs, of course, is they convey the intent of the receiver's desire to receive funds. That intent needs to be reasonably well defined in terms of a preference order universally. As in, like, it is obvious that we prefer shielded over transparent, and we prefer orchard over sapling, in that kind of preference order, so that wallets and wallet developers know, like, given a UA, this is the one you should select. So in a receiver with multiple chains, I could see that getting confusing for UX, so we would want to discuss it further. But conceptually, having like, I'm happy to receive funds on Ethereum at this address or on Zcash at this address. There isn't a technical reason why you wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay. Tayor?
I just wanted to note that there was another zip that was updated as part of NU5. I think zip 401 got updated to reference wide transaction IDs.
401?
Addressing mempool denial of service.
Yes, there was a very small reference, but it is still an implementation change.
Yes, that's on my to-do list, I think. It hasn't already been done.
Okay. Okay, I'll add it to this list for completeness. Okay, all right.
Oh,
okay.
actually, yeah, I think I did do that. Carry on.
Okay. Let's see. Eddie had a question in the chat. Dara answered that one, so we'll keep moving on. The remaining audit schedule, QED-it had come back and requested some additional time. We at the time were anticipating last Arborist call sometime between the 20th and the 27th for that draft report readout. It's now scheduled for the 30th, which is Tuesday of next week. So that's when we're kind of getting the result of their findings. We've had some, interim reports from them, and yeah, looking forward to the final on that. That's has taken a little bit longer than we originally anticipated, which then kind of plays into our testnet release, which would set testnet activation height on the Zcashd side. We want to get, we're not expecting anything significant out of that based on what we've gotten so far from QED-it, but we do want to take a look at what they found, and if there's anything potentially that we want to address, then we want to do that in the testnet release. So, Tayor.
Sorry, no, that I forget on Zoom.
Oh, okay. I thought it popped back up. But anyway, that's kind of the QED-it status. We'll obviously know more after Tuesday on their findings. That'll be the draft report, final report, like NCC would come out later. And then from a scheduling perspective, we're hoping to cut the testnet release as soon as we get those findings addressed. But again, it kind of depends on what they are. We don't anticipate anything significant, but you also never know. That's why you do audits. So we'll have the meeting on Tuesday. Hopefully we can cut a release candidate next week, which would then include the testnet activation height. That would be release 450 for Zcashd. Obviously we can coordinate, async on the Discord about, about the status of the audits and our progress toward implementing anything that was found. But that's as current as we have at the moment. We'll obviously know more after Tuesday morning US time. Any questions anyone has on any of that? Let's see. All right.
Did we mention on the call, I forget if it occurred after last week's Arborist or not, but the Poseidon stuff, has that been mentioned on here yet?
No, it has not. That would be excellent to
so
yes,
so I'm just raising this then, just for wider awareness. One of the audit results from one of the other audits on Orchard was, it was a minor point about our particular implementation of the Poseidon hash function we're using in nullified derivation. And in chasing that down, I realized that the current production implementations of Poseidon in several large deployments are incompatible. This has led me to start trying to write a specification that can be used by the wider community. So my current intent is I'm specifying Poseidon as we've currently are using it, which to me was a plain reading of the Poseidon paper as applied to a sponge instantiation. But my hope is that over the next couple of weeks, I've managed to get some reasonable buy-in from some other projects that are currently trying to do Poseidon stuff themselves, and we're thinking of doing specifications. So I'm hoping over the next couple of weeks to push some momentum on that and sort of get an agreement between the people who are about to deploy Poseidon to sort of honor at least a minimal spec that is self-consistent amongst those projects. Whether or not we're able to make it compatible with some of the existing deployments, we will have to decide. But I'm not going to block on that because at a minimum, we know we will be incompatible with every existing deployment because they all deployed Poseidon prior to the update to the paper, the 1.1 update to the paper that changed the way that MDSs and parameters were derived. So there's already going to be a difference. It's just how much of a difference it is, because the problem in the existing ones was also that the way they did the sponges internally was different. There's enough differences that I don't consider it a problem if we end up using something that doesn't match existing deployments. I would just very much like it to match other things that other people are trying to deploy now. So the reason that I bring that up here is because if in another month or month and a half or so in that window, obviously we have to pin down what we're going to use prior to a mainnet support release. But there is a likelihood, not guaranteed, we may stick with what we're using, but if we come to an agreement on a particular specification that doesn't match what Zcash is currently doing, then that will constitute a change to the circuit, which will mean that testnet will be rolled back. Now, we've had rollbacks on testnet before. The code is in there for Zcashd, and if you just upgrade, it will work fine. But I just wanted to make sure that was aware in the wider community. And it may not happen, but yeah. And similarly,
I would prefer
have a rollback if we just yeah. But it could also happen if we found a bug in the circuit between now and mainnet activation, for instance. So you should all be prepared for that kind of thing to happen during the testnet period anyway. But it's more likely than not that it could occur this time compared to others.
Your job.
Cool. Very good. I saw a quick first draft or in progress draft on Tuesday at the Zip editors meeting, and I've cited that to some of our other engineers and people with cryptography experience here to get more eyes on the thing. More eyes, more gooder. Are we
think
thinking
it was quick it's I'm happy that it reads that way. It didn't write that way.
Okay, well, the hardest part is making it look easy. What was I gonna say? We're gonna update the spec to point at the C2 SP, right?
Yes.
Is that the way? Okay.
Yeah, my intention is that the 0.1 draft, no matter what other people want to do, the 0.1 will be what Z is equal, like it will be compatible with what the spec currently says. So we can then, if we do make a change, we can make a note in the protocol spec somewhere that says we originally used 0.1 of this draft, and we then switched before launch to 1.0 or whatever.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you.
All right.
I don't know whether we'll actually make that C2 document a normative reference, or whether we'll just note that it's compatible.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now the normative references to the 1.1 version of the Poseidon reference implementation Sage script. So I would hope that the document might be a bit more scrutable.
Yep.
All right. All right. Hello. Hey, Zuko.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Let me get the screen back up. We'll keep charging ahead. Okay, so any other, before we move on, any other questions about NU5 or anything, or comments, or and my screen will load again. There we go. No, I think we're good in the chat as well. Okay, moving forward. So one of the, again, as I mentioned up front, we just discuss a variety of topics during the kind of open discussion section of the Arborist calls. And one of the things that was suggested, it's kind of been on the list for a while. We just haven't had the cycles or the time to get to it. But, you know, essentially, for lack of a better title, what needs to happen before deprecating T addresses? Dodger had worked on a presentation a while back at ECC. So we just thought we'd pull some of that content out and put in here just to kind of talk about some of the things that would have to be in place and considerations for deprecating T addresses. That, I mean, I think sometimes people are like, it's as simple as turning it off. And I guess technically it would be, but you know, maybe you want to think through that a little bit before you do it. So anyway, let me move forward. I think I moved one screen too far. 1 second. Yes, there we go. So this is a, you know, kind of brainstormed list of prerequisites, and Dodger, I'll, you know, feel free to chime in on any of these. I can kind of breeze over them. There's a really good series of like slides on tables coming up that talk about, you know, considerations and trade-offs and how some of those things might be addressed. So Nate.
Oh, I should probably wait for the full presentation, but last Arborist call, I said I would work on a document about trade-offs. So it'll probably segue into this presentation. But I notice number 2 right here has the same trade-off that I believe we were discussing last time, except that was more in the context of shielded pools about whether or not you can leave funds indefinitely, or if someday they will vanish.
Right.
Yeah, one thing I should make clear is that this list dates from quite some time ago. I think maybe 2018.
I think so.
When we all got together in Denver, and we had a big brainstorm session with the whiteboards, and I've actually got photos of the whiteboards, but the overall kind of concept that we came up with. And by the way, I'm speaking from the point of view of what we and I were thinking at ECC back late last year. ECC's thinking may have changed. Mine hasn't really. But the thinking was that rather than setting a timetable and a target date for deprecating T addresses, we decided to think of what needs to happen. So what are the prerequisites for switching off T addresses? And we had this brainstormed list, and this is that list. And it was kind of like what needs to happen, and then down at the bottom, you know, number 17, deprecate T addresses. Right. So all of these things are like how we need to go about it. You know, so some of the stuff in there is about communicating to make sure that the community is aware well in advance, like providing updates on T address deprecation status. You know, and some of it, you know, relates to you know, we also realized that currently the regulatory perception of Zcash and the ability of regulated exchanges to list Zcash is heavily dependent on its support for transparent transactions. So anyway, the kind of approach here was to think, well, what are the things that need to happen before we can switch off T addresses? And then there's a separate discussion, actually, and I know Zico's got some strong feelings about this, around the idea that actually T addresses aren't always bad and aren't necessarily bad for Zcash. And there's been, you know, we've had sticks and stones thrown at us for supporting transparent transactions, but actually they're not necessarily a bad thing. And I'll let Zico talk about that maybe in a bit.
Okay. Nate, your hand was up next, I think.
Oh yeah, it was a question. All of these kind of make sense to me, except where was it? It was 12. What does 12 mean? Z-address funds lockup mitigation?
So editorial note on this, I literally just copied the slides. So I didn't even have time to, the only thing I did, there was one item that had been crossed out, add sapling viewing key support, which had already been done. So I did delete that one. That was my only editorial function in this role. Implement Z address funds lockup mitigation. I do not know.
Stephen, you don't have to feel bad about that. I was here at the meeting where we were writing these down, and I don't know what that means.
Okay, thank you.
I was there too, and I don't remember it.
Okay. All
I think this maybe has something to do with oh, so this is where when you spend a note, so this is the UI thing that I think might have been resolved in the wallet, or maybe there was some talk recently about the minimum confirmation. So this is where you spend a note, and then you're like, okay, I've got a note with 10 Zec, and then I spend 1 Zec. Oh, where's my 9 Zec? It's disappeared. That was what that was about.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a couple of other thoughts of what it might have been. So I might raise those later. But yeah, I think so. This was sort of the section of the prerequisite, which was okay. We can't really deprecate T addresses until Z addresses are at least as usable as T addresses.
Yeah,
which is one of the categories of blockers.
Yeah,
I think the mitigation we intended there was note management. So making sure that you always have some of your funds in notes that aren't locked up. So obviously there will still be some latency before you can spend all of your funds, but you'll at least be able to spend some of them. I have my hand up because I just wanted to comment on the issue about exchanges. So I've just posted a link in the chat, which is the exchanges supported by Monero, and there are quite a lot of them. And Monero does not have any T address equivalent. It may not have a strong privacy, but it doesn't have T addresses. So I would push back on the idea that T addresses are necessary for exchanges. I think there are technical reasons why it may be difficult to for exchanges to implement T addresses, but we shouldn't conflate those with T addresses being necessary for regulatory reasons.
Good point. Question, and I haven't looked at that list, but how many of those are regulated exchanges? Like they would pass like NYDFS, for example, like Gemini.
Is Poloniex? The ones that I recognize are Poloniex and Binance. There's Bitfinex as well, Kraken. So there are some reasonably sort of well-known, widely used exchanges there. This is not an endorsement of any particular exchange.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So one thing I remember Nate saying right after I first joined, I think ECC, which it always kind of stuck with me because it made a lot of sense, and it's also a summary. It's also another way of saying exactly what Dodger said. But that's make shielded support so attractive, no one even really wants to use T addresses, essentially. And then it's not even really a controversial kind of thing. If you come up with a plan, it's like, okay, great. We've got a better alternative. So if we create a better alternative, it kind of takes care of itself. But yeah, in general, the great list, it's much more involved than just simply turning it off. You need to protect the project, need to communicate, get community feedback, make sure regulatory, nothing is impacted from a regulatory perspective. And then just the mechanics of, not even T address deprecation, but pool deprecation in general, which is something Nate's been looking at. Like, how do you deprecate Sprout fully? How do you, soon it will be, how do you deprecate sapling fully? Okay, so let me bounce on. So this is I thought what a really good table. So hurdles to deprecating T addresses, and it's just kind of a number of considerations and then potential mitigants or solutions to overcome that. But an excellent list. So I mean, again, T address support obviously is inherited from Bitcoin essentially, and there's a number of partners that can support Zcash out of the box because of T address support. So what partners or users would be negatively impacted by that? And then what are some of the mitigations there? User confidence might be negatively affected, or there might be some degree of panic. How do you overcome that? Well, that kind of goes back, I think, to the first list. And I'm just kind of bouncing over these. So, Nate, Dodger, Zuko, anybody there that was in, when this was actually put together, feel free to chime in. Yep, Zuko.
Since this list was made, we came up with the idea of unified addresses. And I kind of think at the previous screen, I was kind of thinking, yeah, like get everyone or almost everyone to support unified addresses is probably a huge step forward on most of these. For some of them.
That's a very good point. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Can we actually go back to the previous slide and talk about that specifically?
Yep.
So let's see. So one of the things that is coming along with unified addresses is auto shielding, as supported by the SDK, and we hope it'll be supported by several wallets. So that's where if you send to a T address, it gets automatically shielded. And I think once that's in place, ideally, sort of most of the funds held by people using those wallets will be shielded, but they'll still be able to interoperate with exchanges and merchants using only T addresses. Now, obviously, there's some loss of privacy there, especially if you think about network layer metadata leakage. But still, you get a substantial privacy improvement from holding most of your funds as shielded. The other thing that we need to sort out is support for multi-signatures. So that would come under 15 desired Bitcoin features, in this case, multi-sig. Do we have any, have we had any progress on Frost?
Nothing evolved in the summer since Chelsea has been on leave at Microsoft Research for the summer. No evolution to what has been published and implemented in the spring, basically.
Okay. We might need to sort of chivvy that along a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely be picking that back up.
Okay.
And the other obvious one is shielded hardware wallet support.
Yep. Okay. All right. Zuko, is your hand still up, or did you have
That's a stale hand.
Stale hand. Okay. Okay. No problem. All right. So back to the table. Yeah, three is related to what we were talking earlier about regulatory concerns. Like, are there, regulators might have concerns about a fully shielded cryptocurrency. Some people might just want transparent transactions. So, how do you mitigate that? There's I think Dodger actually put a link in the chat last time to public transactions, to Zcash 2558. And then that should be crossed off the second bullet, implement support for sapling viewing keys. And then full support for payment disclosures would kind of help mitigate some of that.
So that's actually another feature that Bitcoin has. You can sign with to prove that you control an address. And we have designs for how to do that for shielded addresses, which are actually a component of the payment disclosure protocol.
Right.
So payment disclosure is implemented in terms of those signatures,
right.
But we need to specify that for Orchard.
Right. Okay. Good question from Geffen in the chat. Shielded hardware support reminds me of the grant for Ledger. Can we reach out to them and try to help bootstrap it for UAs? The current status of the work Zondex has done with Ledger is they're looking for a wallet partner to kind of finish that up. Trezor has also applied for a grant, and I believe has a grant for hardware support on that side. And they're in chatting with them, their intent is to support unified addresses and NU5 in the initial delivery of their support. So that'll be good. Nate.
Yeah. So the question about hardware wallets helped stimulate this for me. So on the table, number 1 is true, but it's sort of glossing over how there's a bunch of different use cases, and different use cases might have different challenges. So we were talking about exchanges because that's sort of a big obvious one, but like hardware wallets would be another one. And there are probably many others. So if T addresses were deprecated sort of prematurely, according to some standard, we might lose entire use cases. So we might see the total volume or on-chain metrics go down only a little bit, but we might be missing an entire use case. And sometimes those different use cases can sort of be reinforcing. So it's just something to be cautious about.
Excellent point. Dodger.
Yeah, on the Ledger side, in order to progress with getting shielded support into, I think Ledger Live, they need Ledger require that you have an actual wallet working with it, and that's the next step. And I think they were talking with Aditya from Zec Wallet.
Correct.
That his pipeline was full at the time.
Right.
So that's something that's definitely still like it's on the back burner. We're hoping to get that moving again in the distant future.
Right. Yeah. Okay, Paku.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to like add to what Nate said about the address deprecation happening early, and it would be, I think we have already done so, but in some extent. But like if we were to, let's say tomorrow, we have to deprecate the addresses tomorrow, and then we have to ask ourselves like what use cases would be like left out, and then we can like come up with a list of this like requirements that are being like lost in the way, and we can then think about them. And do we have like shielded features that can like replace them or compensate for their their loss, and then like make those a priority on our list, so that then when we do them, we are we can say, oh, we can deprecate the addresses tomorrow and we won't lose anything, or what will be lost will be not significant, and won't leave anything anyone behind or cause any damage to our partners or users, etc.
Right.
I mean, it's worth pointing out that all of these features are things that we want anyway. It's not as though they are features that the only usefulness is as a path towards deprecating T addresses. We need multi-sig. We need shielded multi-sig. We need shielded hardware wallets.
Right.
We need signing support for shielded addresses. We need payment disclosures, independent of deprecating T addresses.
No, that's a very good point. Strad.
Yeah, I was just echoing, I think, yeah, Paku, and then I think Dara had mentioned some before of like, yeah, the pieces that get lost when you if you remove tiered address support on its own. I was just thinking back also to a survey I ran. I ran it in, let's see, September 2019, and then again in December 2020, just surveying the chain to figure out how people were using specifically P2SH addresses. Because remembering in the protocol, we have two kinds of T addresses that are supported as standard kinds of addresses. You can obviously create whatever kinds of outputs you want, but as far as like standard kinds of P2SH, and which is sort of the ones that, you know, if you have P2PKH, you know it's just a public key. You know how it's going to be used. And non-standard ones, I don't think I've really seen basically any of them. But as far as the P2SH ones go, I think it was something, if I'm looking here, yeah, like something on the order of 90-something% of them are effectively multi-sig. So
yeah, it was that many multi-sig, and then there was a handful of uses of HTLC hash time lock contracts.
Yeah, what I actually
which
probably
we could
need to do is do a
survey.
Yeah, which I probably actually need to do a version of the survey that actually just looks at like the last 2 years, for instance, because I know like early on there was obviously like a bunch of logic that did various things. I know the other thing my survey was looking for was what are things that are stored, like that still have funds stored in them, and that my survey doesn't cover that specifically, but that's sort of definitely those two components.
I thought you couldn't tell that because you can't tell what a P2SH script is until it's spent.
There's a different, there is outputs. Once, yeah, you're correct that if a P2SH address appears on the network and you never spend from it, you can't tell what's in there, which is a problem. But I think that was like 4% or lower of, at least when I did the survey. However, what I was actually just meaning just now was, okay, for the actual current UTXO set, my survey was covering what has historically been used everywhere. But I suspect that there was probably more experimentation earlier on with a variety of things. And I would expect that nowadays we probably see a narrower distribution of uses. But yeah, we could scan for that and figure that out.
Okay. Nate.
Yeah, a little more thinking about use cases. I usually do this thing where I think about different types of products or services I know about and the technology involved, and then sort of I categorize those. But it's a totally different question to ask: how are different groups of people using the Zcash blockchain, and how are they using it differently? And I don't have any good way to answer that, something we're sort of grappling with at ECC. But I know that there's one mystery that's on my mind just today because Zuko tweeted about it yesterday, and that is the on-chain transfer volume that is obviously transparent only. And I just pulled up a chart. Can I do this? This chart's wild. But basically, without seeing the chart, the on-chain volume has grown substantially in 2021, and it seems to have started right around January, and I don't know why. And so one question would be, is that mostly due to like a single kind of behavior? And can we get whoever is doing that kind of behavior to just start using shielded now? Because what if, you know, doing that one cool trick would change like 90% of the transaction usage suddenly to shielded simply because there's this one behavior that's really popular, right? So that's also in my mind as like another approach to doing this.
Oh, let's see, Strad, your hands back up.
Yes, response to that. We could figure out with, again, a more targeted check of the chain, what kinds of activity, what kinds of functionality they require at least in terms of on-chain logic, in order to do that migration. Because for like, I would suspect that that amount of volume is very likely involving multi-sig, because if I were to hazard a guess, it is probably large exchange volumes moving around. You know, haven't looked into it, but I would suspect at a minimum we would need to get a useful multi-sig before we could just go to them and say, hey, do this. But we can actually, even without going to them or knowing who they are, we can look at what the functionality the top users by volume of transparent Zec are using, rather than just by total transactions.
I mean, we've had a bit of a difficulty in prioritizing things like shielded multisig and shielded hardware wallets, because we've been so focused on protocol upgrades at ECC. And I mean, this issue is going to continue because we're now focused on CSAs for NU6. And protocol features are very nice, and they're very interesting to work on. But maybe we just need to slow down and focus on shoring up the things that are missing in the current protocol that are not consensus.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna bounce to the next slide. Another hurdle, unable to use Bitcoin scripts. Potential mitigants, add general programmability. For example, the or smart, or smartness in some fashion, which covers the major.
I mean, that's a long-term thing. I don't see that as I don't see that should be a blocker on deprecating T addresses, because that, as Strad proved, the actual usage of Bitcoin script is very stereotyped to particular use cases.
Yeah, and by the way, this isn't meant to be like a laundry list of like things and blockers per se, but if there's technology that uses Bitcoin scripts, like at a partner, for example, in some fashion, I don't think anyone's using hash time lock contracts at the moment. But if there were, hypothetically, what could you do as an alternative? Like, what's an alternative for that? Let's see.
Well, the clear alternative for that is, if we, again, there's a delta between, and actually Taylor alluded to the opposite of this in chat. You can separate T addresses, as in Bitcoin script, from transparent transactions or transparent components of transactions. And so if the thing we wanted to remove was specifically Bitcoin script, because like if the motivation for removing Bitcoin script is we don't want the complexity of it or whatever, it could be replaced with a TZE that specifically provides the cross-chain logic for that case. Yes. But doesn't allow you to just leave funds in an arbitrary address for other use cases potentially.
And the advantage of TZEs for that is that you have a migration path to shielded, because you know exactly what the TZE is doing. It's not a general, well, Bitcoin script is not a general purpose language anyway, but its expressiveness makes things difficult, because it's a general stack language.
Nate, I saw your hand up, but then it went back down.
Oh, it was just I'm interested to learn more about discrete log contracts and how they might be useful in Zcash, both transparent and shielded, for various kinds of functionality.
Okay, cool. All right. I'll keep moving on. Making the change, meaning getting rid of T addresses or dropping support, might not be popular. So that goes back to kind of what we were talking about originally, like communication, like a ton of communication, monitoring public opinion, and how you might go about doing that. And again, these are mitigation strategies. Number 6, it could be difficult, again, back to partners, because of the effort to switch from whatever their integration is or however they use T addresses today to Z addresses. To Zuko's point, perhaps unified addresses makes that easier in some fashion. The mitigation is kind of what we talked about as well. Make shielded support so attractive and easy to use that it's kind of a non-issue, which you could summarize this table by saying if we did that, then the bulk of these should go away. Anyway, so let's see, number 7, switching to Z addresses could cause personal pain to certain users if governments, regulators decide that private transactions are not great. But that goes back to regulatory outreach, which is a ton of work, as Dodger well knows, who did it for a number of years at ECC. But it's an ongoing, as we've seen recently with the infrastructure bill in the US, it's an ongoing challenge. Cold storage. Some people may have stored their T address in cold storage in some fashion. But continue to allow T to Z transactions, either indefinitely or for a reasonable long period of time, is a mitigation strategy. Number 9, using only Z addresses will make counterfeit detection more difficult. Implement regular turnstiles to detect inflation due to counterfeiting. Turnstiles is kind of a strategy we use going between pools anyway.
At this point, I need to express my opinion that you should only have a turnstile if you are actually changing the cryptography, because that's the only point at which it's really useful to detect counterfeiting. I know Zuko disagrees with me on this point.
All right. I thought I saw Deirdre's hand pop up really quickly. I got a little notification.
I was trying to, sometimes in Zoom, you can give reactions like claps and stuff. I was looking for that to thumbs up Dara's comment.
Okay. Okay. I get a little tiny notification in the corner that says Deirdre raised her hand, and then I go back to the display. And
yeah, it's in Google Meet where you have to click the reactions button to get to the raise hand button.
Ah, exactly. Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Well, that was it. So before I move on, any other comments, questions? It's kind of a great discussion. It's a thought-provoking kind of thing. Again, this, for clarity, this isn't like making product decisions, like how you would do it or what you would do first, but just it stimulates discussion and kind of gets it back on, everyone's mind, and also kind of helps level set and open the discussion around anything like this or anything else we might discuss. We have to kind of get the discussion started on whatever it might be. Proof of stake might be one coming up in, post NU5 era Arborist calls to begin talking about openly. So yeah.
I do worry that we might be being a little bit too conservative in our plans about deprecating T addresses. I mean, other coins get away with it. So we know it's possible. We might have to just take some risks.
What's an example of other coins doing it?
Monero.
Didn't they simply turn up the required minimum mix-in? So they didn't remove any pre-existing funds. That would be equivalent to saying
Monero has never had any equivalent of T addresses. That's what I'm saying.
There's a difference there, though, between never having transparent addresses and having them and then removing them. There's the removing for privacy argument, and then there's the removing for getting rid of the old protocol debt argument. And I think I agree with you on the privacy one there, but the removing protocol debt one, which requires preventing old funds from being used at all, is the piece that becomes more problematic, I think.
Yeah, that's certainly tricky.
Could be a good segue to the thing I was working on.
I think also, like, Derek, you made a point that exchanges do support Monero, but not on Coinbase, right? Not on Gemini,
That's
you
true.
know,
Yeah.
there's exchanges and then there's exchanges.
Right.
And that's not meant to, that's not meant to not intend to speak ill of the exchanges that do support Monero, but
Right.
I think there's a market penetration that Zcash has achieved with T addresses that I think is
I mean,
greater.
you have to ask whether from users' point of view, it actually, to what extent it matters which exchange they're using. I mean, I don't particularly care whether the exchange is regulated. I care whether they do a rug pull and run off with my money. But I'm not sure that being regulated has much correlation with that. I just posted the exchanges that Pirate Chain, which is a Zcash code fork that is fully shielded, the exchanges that they support, and I mean there are some. Yeah, they're mostly not very well known exchanges, but it's at least it's another demonstration that you can do this.
There is, however, a quantity argument there, which, versus quality/ease of access, because you can be on a bunch of exchanges, but people can still not really gain access to unless they're already in the club by having crypto. Because a lot of those exchanges on that list will be pure crypto exchanges and not actually how people onboard. So if the goal is to get more new users, then you need to be in the places where you can get fiat onboarding. And at the moment, the way you get around that is, go buy Bitcoin and then go over to one of these smaller exchanges, find someone with volume and the prices you're happy with and trade. And
I mean, if people are going to buy Bitcoin with full KYC, AML requirements, and then exchange it to Zcash, you can argue that that part of it is completely transparent anyway, and therefore, do you actually care whether the exchange supports Z addresses? You could get rid of the technical debt aspects of T addresses and still support that use case potentially.
Yeah, although there is still the argument for, yes, you're doing KYC to the exchange. I'd rather not do KYC to Bob from Georgia. The state or the country, both.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, to Chris's point too, which is also what Strad was saying, kind of assess that there's like people who are not, necessarily technology savvy and certainly not crypto familiar might have a Coinbase account, for example, which is just really easy for them to use. They're, it's just a very simple on-ramp. So definitely want to include, as many folks as we can. Okay, let's see. I think we're pretty well caught up. Oh, a couple of hands. Strad, your hands up.
Everyone trying to slip in to get the next word. I mean, when I looked at the link that Derek posted for the Monero ones, I was confused because Z said Z was posting a link for exchanges and the URL said merchants, and actually it's merchant support and sales activity support is the thing that I kind of think is more useful to be getting.
So that link has
into.
That link
it has
a
bunch of things. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. But it got my thinking on the point that I actually don't particularly mind if the exchange pays to from a T address to a Z address. It'd be nice if they didn't, but it's just the one entry point there. But actually enabling more other people to transact and be able to easily transact at larger volumes than individual peer-to-peer payment messaging. That's something that we don't really have a good turnkey solution for. No one has built a turnkey solution for that in the same way that there are for other transparent chains. Or there are turnkey solutions that can be used with Zcash, but they work because of the Bitcoin integration via Transparent. And that's not really like, that's another sort of area that I didn't see directly mentioned on the list there, but like, as far as classes of categories of use cases go, it's one that I would want to see specifically served, enabled prior to trying to remove T addresses.
I mean, are we not better building new things that are shielded only rather than trying to argue that all of the existing things are going to work, because they're not?
I didn't say anything either way. I said that they don't exist in a way that supports shielded. You could, you can product solve that by adding shielded support to existing things or building new things. But the fact of the matter is that I don't know of any anything that a merchant go, I want to support Zcash in a shop, that they can just get shielded support by installing some software.
Yep.
Other than installing like Zec wallet, and it's not something that is designed for merchant usage.
All right, Dodger.
Yeah. So the reason that this kind of bubbled up to the top of our priorities recently is because Don't Be Evil on the forums, asked why don't we have a Zcap vote about deprecating T addresses. So that's why I kind of asked Stephen to bump this up the agenda priority. But also I think it's there's two key implementers currently in the Zcash protocol world, ECC and the Junior Foundation, still developing Zebra. And I think it's fair to say that neither organization currently feels like we're ready to progress, actively towards switching off T addresses. So as a result, I personally don't think it's the sort of thing that makes sense to present for a vote, to the Zcap, because unless there is, I think, consensus at the protocol, core team level, then I don't think it makes sense to say it's, because we'd be saying to the community, yeah, you can vote for it, but we're not actually going to do it because we don't think it's a good idea right now.
And actually, even the most gung-ho about removing T addresses like me are still not advocating to do it now, or even within 12 months or 18 months.
Yeah, I think it is useful that we're talking about it though, because if we're never going to get to the point of being able to have the discussion and vote, if we haven't solved the other problems.
Yeah.
So as far as like action items to that direction, do we have it'd be good somewhere like so some of the stuff that was in this document that's now been in the slides here. It'd be good maybe to tease that out into maybe I don't know if a public document or a wiki or something somewhere where we can start like putting together like what are the topic areas for, like if you are motivated in the community to help us along in this direction, these are the things that need work. And sort of making maybe map to T address portal somewhere or something that can I've been thinking very much in like
create a
data
DAG
visualization lately, and like how can I help build the machine that builds the machine, and how can I help enable other people to know where they can best do work. And this feels like one where everyone wants to do things here, and we just need a little bit of guidance and direction. So I don't really want to volunteer myself, but if no one else wants to volunteer on that, then I guess I will.
So I would say, what was I about to say? Oh, a DAG. A DAG would be awesome. You're the DAG expert. I'm not volunteering you for that. I'm actually not even remotely suggesting you do that because
at least
we've
not
got so
not
much
in
to
the
do.
next month or so, please.
Yeah.
So-
So, okay. I think Nate was next. So.
Oh, so my hand is is a slight switch of topics where I wanted to talk about how I was documenting trade-offs, and they're relevant to the conversation we just had, but also I kind of wanted to discuss where to do that. So I made a pull request and with some documentation, I kind of wanted to give like a 5-minute overview of that if we want to switch topics.
Well, we're actually coming up on about 4 minutes in the call. So
oh yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So but I mean
share
there's an excellent like topic for the next call or something, or async in the R&D Discord or something, just to kind of kick that off.
Sure. I'll do it there.
Okay. Paku, your hand was up as well.
Oh yeah. I had a short opinion and or disagreement on like just polling the community on T-address deprecation. Is obvious that we are strongly opinionated on like there being like the T-addresses being convenient but a problem, and I think that it wouldn't actually represent the Zec holders as a whole. Probably, I'm just like checking out on my side monitor, like the market cap or the trading volume of Zcash, like 400 million nearly today. Are those 400 million, in the forums, like moved from people in the forums?
Good question.
Like, I hope they do, like, yeah, I hope they do well, like our users, dear users, but I don't think so. So there's a lot of people that we don't know of. We don't know their opinions, their pseudonyms, anything about them.
Right.
And like those will be the people affected by this poll result that probably will end on and cut them off tomorrow or yesterday or something like that. So I think that we have to like be careful and like be thoughtful as we are being, and just work towards making a smooth transition to something that doesn't require T-addresses. And also like thinking about like this, I had this crazy theory when we were discussing UAs, is that I think that people actually don't know about different addresses at all. For them, they're just letters, weird letters and numbers that they don't want to deal with at all. And if they could get away with them, and don't have to think about addresses anymore, users will be really, really happy, and they don't care about T, Z, Orchard, anything like that. They just want Zcash. And so that's how like UAs were spun up in this design sprint. So it's important to have that in mind. And maybe when we have these discussions that affect so many people that are like everywhere in the world and we don't know anything about them. And we are a privacy minded community, so we probably don't mind knowing much about them either. That's the contradiction.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to point that out, and
Cool.
Thanks.
All right. I threw my hand up really quickly for a couple of things. One is that's an excellent point, Paku, is representing coin holders in some fashion. Coin holders, a lot of coin holders probably don't participate in the forums and may not ever tweet about Zcash or anything else where we look to gauge sentiment, which is kind of like the Zcap, the Zcap polls are gauging sentiment, right? They're not like in Dodger, there was some people that had some questions. Oh, why wasn't this on the list or that on the list in the survey? And Dodger's like, oh, we're gauging sentiment. This isn't like a binding thing. It's just kind of to see what's on people's minds. And, but yeah, like to also, be able, I know at one point in time, Andrew Miller did, I think it might've been before my time, like a T address kind of poll or coin holder poll or something that, may have been some ways to improve upon. I'm not familiar with that in details, and we definitely don't have time to discuss it today. But yeah, representing coin holders in protocol kind of things. And then this is totally not an opportunity to segue, but I am really excited about proof of stake. And we talk about making shielded Zcash like so attractive that people would be like, why would I ever want to use T addresses? Like delegated staking and proof of stake with your shielded funds is an incredible incentive to get to like not use T addresses. But we definitely don't have time to discuss that today, but I'm looking forward to talking about it down the road. And then, just to reiterate for everyone on the call, which everyone on the call knows, but everyone that might be listening, when we talk about doing things like deprecating T addresses or proof of stake, we have multiple mechanisms to, gauge community sentiment. And we don't make like product decisions on here. Like, what do we do next? We might make like, hey, what do we do in the protocol? We make those kind of decisions, but we're definitely not making, hey, we're going to get together on the Arborist call and we're going to come out and tell you what happens for the next 2 years. So we might have opinions about what we ought to do, but anyway, just for clarification on that. So Dodger, your hand was up, and I'll give you the last word.
I mean, I totally agree that the Zcap poll. I was actually thinking that maybe we should come up with different names. So like I would call this an opinion poll to to just help us. Like something like the process that led to ZIP 1014 was a more formal and a more structured governance process where I think both the foundation and the ECC had agreed that we were gonna let the community say what they wanted to happen, right. And I think we have to be careful about any sort of situation where there's compulsion. So for example, during the ZIP 1014 process, ECC said, well, we're not gonna accept this job if it comes with a dollar cap. And the foundation said, well, we're not gonna accept a dev fund if we're the only recipient. So you can't have then the community, there's right. No point in allowing the community then to vote on a proposal to make the foundation the only recipient of the dev fund if they're unwilling to take that. Right. So I think like there's different types of consulting the Zcap, and in this case it's purely an opinion poll. It does include that question of whether we should reopen nominations, and we've committed to following what opinion the community expresses. But I think also we need to be aware that there's an element of expertise here that needs to be respected. ECC, the team at ECC have built this thing from scratch. We have been deeply embedded in it. I've spoken to regulators, so there's a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of exposure, there's a lot of expertise there that I think needs to be respected, and we can't just let an opinion poll right. override that. So yeah. And the final thing, actually, the reason I raised my hand was to talking about the trade-offs. I think is really good. Here the trade-off might be that we can switch off T addresses tomorrow, but it gets delisted from a whole bunch of exchanges. Right. So those understanding those trade-offs, I think that perhaps we at ECC, when I was part of the team at ECC, I think we had internalized those trade-offs and we understood them, and we've kind of documented them. We've now shared that, and hopefully this now communicates to the community, to the broader community, what some of those trade-offs may be and why we're not aggressively moving towards switching off T addresses.
Good point. All right, Dara, last word.
Okay, so I was going to make the point that when we're developing new features, for example, CSAs or scalability improvements, we have the option to only support those for Z addresses. And that's in some ways much less risky than trying to remove support for T-addresses from existing use cases, because those new use cases will succeed or fail on their own,
right,
on the basis of whether people want to use them with shielded.
It's a good point. Yep. All right. Well, we are coming up on time. So, yeah, thanks everyone. Great discussion. We'll catch up in the forum.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
The R&D Discord. We'll have some data from QED-it on Tuesday. So we'll be, we'll have an update in the R&D Discord on kind of status of testnet release pretty quick after that. So looking forward to getting that out. And yeah, so thanks everyone for being on the call and all the great conversation. So have a good rest of the day wherever you are.
Bye, everybody.
Good upcoming weekend. So
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.